we were invited. Is that better?
Nope.
Okay.
Make a suggestion.
All right.
Turn off the heater. Let's kill the heater.
John?
She's on it. She's going to turn the heater off.
We'll get it. Want to turn the microphone up, John? Or sound?
Okay, how's that? All right, thank you. First, I want to start by thanking the Tea Party for inviting me. About 6 months ago, 4 of us were up here giving a talk to the community for the first time. And that was what got the word out about the hospital. We had been very concerned about the impact on the community, but hadn't really broken through to the community until the Tea Party. So I want to really thank the organizers for giving us that opportunity and this opportunity. Last time I started by telling you I was very fearful of public speaking. I also want to thank you for curing me of that. I must thank the hospital too, I suppose. And the reason I want to take questions as they come up is make sure that I'm making it clear that there's a very complex series of topics here tonight, but also I want to take your suggestions because we followed up on every suggestion that we got from this group last time, and I can give you some of the details, but they all were very fruitful. And I learned last week that newly elected State Senator Jim Nielsen is beginning to form a committee to help us here in Del Norte to maintain a full-service hospital and to maintain ownership of the hospital. So that was one of the suggestions. I know the person who gave that to me is out there, and I thank you. I think these 2 topics are pretty big, and I want to start with critical access before we go on to Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, because the critical access issue, I think, is a little bit more urgent based on a meeting that occurred last week at the hospital. But there's a common theme that joins them. And the theme is excluding people from important issues that affect their life and affect their health. Now, all of us were excluded from the inner workings of Obamacare. And everyone except me has been excluded from the boardroom. And on 2 occasions, even I was dismissed from the boardroom, which I've been told by 3 attorneys is illegal under corporate law. But at any rate, I want to bring you into the boardroom of the hospital as much as I can without subjecting myself to any litigation on the part of Sutter Health, who are very well known for their legal team. So last week, Sutter Health invited 3 executives from Sutter Health to come to our hospital. They were not invited by the board, and they made a presentation on implementing critical access designation at our hospital. And for those of you who are still getting up to speed on what that means, it imposes a 25-bed cap, which cannot be exceeded, so when the 26th patient comes in, they'll be on an airplane to another hospital. Secondly, the average stay has to be less than 4 days. And finally, a lot of the provisions and stipulations that our current hospital operates under, such as having a general surgeon, an intensive care specialist on call, and a physician on duty in the emergency room, all disappear under critical access designation. Now, it does not mean that they're going to get rid of our general surgeon, but they could. And it does mean there'll be a cap. And one of the disturbing things in the meeting that I found was when the question came up, what happens when you go over the cap? One of the Sutter Lakeside executives said, a regulator comes and they ask you questions and then they leave. And I found that troubling. It indicated, I mean, basically presenting to the board that there was some flexibility in that cap. Subsequently, I was actually able to obtain the exact language, and the language reads the following: the critical access hospital may not have more than 25 beds that could be used for inpatient care. Any hospital type bed located in or adjacent to any location where the bed could be used for inpatient care counts towards the 25 bed limit. It is an absolute cap, and there's been some misinformation about that on the part of some of the Sutter Health people that I would like to dispel. The following day, I asked our CEO to put me in contact with the regulator that visited Sutter Lakeside, because I'm not sure he would have been satisfied with the answer that he comes up to the hospital, answers or asks a few questions, and then he leaves. The reason it's so serious is we frequently operate over the cap. We frequently have more than 25 people in the hospital, and that's what the first handout that you're going to have discusses. So if you look at the numbers, conservatively, since October 1st, 84 people would have been shipped on aircraft had we been a critical access facility. And that's a conservative estimate. That assumes that we're shipping every patient at 25. We learned last week from the Lakeside executives that they actually leave 3 open for maternity and pediatrics, and sometimes additional beds for elective surgery, so they're shipping at a number lower than the 25 that I used on that study. The cost of the transport is borne by the patient, and the cost alone of the air transport to Medford for a friend of mine last summer was $41,000. Go ahead. That's a great question. So our overflow hospital would be Sutter Pacific Medical Center, California Pacific Medical Center, which is in San Francisco.
We don't get a hospital of our choice if we're paying for it.
That's a great question, and the answer is no. You'll go where there's an accepting physician and an accepting hospital. The problem is, even if you want to go to Medford, there may not be a physician there that will accept you, or that hospital may be full. So that's why there has to be an overflow hospital designated, and ours would be in San Francisco. Imagine the problems associated with being transported by yourself in an aircraft to San Francisco. Go ahead.
So, all these people are being transferred out by airplanes. What happens to them after they're done with the hospital stay?
It's their responsibility to find their way home.
Even if they're been transferred to the
Yes.
hospital?
It's not the hospital's problem anymore. I mean, this is what's so troubling. It's a great question. If we make a decision to cut the hospital in half, we have 49 beds now, and a patient is involuntarily transferred to another hospital, would it not then be the obligation of the hospital that made that voluntary decision? But I can assure you that's not the case. And this strikes at the heart of the healthcare district's lease agreement. When the healthcare district gave Sutter a monopoly on hospital care, they did so in exchange for specific promises. And one was for expanded quantity and quality of services. At the time the lease agreement was signed, we had a 59-bed hospital at Sutter and a 74-bed hospital at Seaside. So already we've shrunken a great deal. Yes?
I might be a little bit naive, but recently with the national NAL meeting, the appointments by the Obama administration during supposed recess type things that happened to the Congress, they recently ruled them unconstitutional. When you speak about the exclusion of the persons in these conferences being illegal, I don't want to say that we live in a world of black and white, but we're existing in an area that is way too comfortably gray, and there needs to be accountability. If you have a drunk driver, there is no question the man either goes to jail or he's set free. If you have something that's illegal, there has to be consequences. It has to be either censorship, a fine, somebody goes to jail, or some other kind of accountability, retribution. Otherwise, you open the door and everybody's going to go through it.
I couldn't have said it better. There's something very troubling about experiencing that and not being able to do anything about it. So, you know, what does that say about our society when there is corporate law? It's not criminal law, but it is corporate law, and it's being ignored. And I could give you plenty more examples. So the point is very well taken, and I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do next time they ask me to leave. And during my absence, they're conducting official board business.
That makes it null.
Right. But they do it anyway. And I'm a full voting member of the board of directors. I'm an ex officio member, and I'm also the only member who's not appointed by Sutter Health. So that leads to a lot of 8-to-1 votes.